The scream that tore through the silver mine's depths on that blistering July afternoon in 1878 would haunt Yates Sullivan for the rest of his days, though not for the reasons anyone might expect. He was riding past the Trinity Mining Company's operation just outside Trinity, Texas, when the earth itself seemed to groan, a deep rumbling that sent his mare dancing sideways in panic. Then came the dust cloud, billowing from the mine entrance like a dragon's breath, and the shouts of men scrambling from the tunnels in various states of terror and confusion. Yates urged his horse forward, his heart pounding as miners stumbled into the harsh sunlight, coughing and cursing. He dismounted before his mare had fully stopped, boots hitting the sun-baked earth at a run. The foreman, a grizzled man named Dutch Carmichael, was frantically counting heads, his weathered face growing paler with each passing second. "How many still inside?" Yates demanded, already knowing he would not like the answer. Dutch's hands shook as he consulted his roster. 3, maybe 4. The surveyor's daughter, she went down this morning with her father to map the new shaft. Robert Granger, the surveyor, he made it out, but she was further in. 2 other men were working that section. Yates did not wait to hear more. He grabbed a lantern from a fleeing miner and headed straight for the entrance. Dutch caught his arm with surprising strength for a man who looked ready to collapse. "You cannot go in there, Sullivan. The whole thing could come down any second. The support timbers are cracked to hell and back." "Then I better move fast," Yates said, shaking off his grip. He had no particular reason to risk his neck for strangers. He was just a cattle driver, passing through Trinity on his way to deliver a herd to San Antonio, stopping only to resupply and maybe enjoy a whiskey or 2 before moving on. He had no ties to this dusty mining town, no obligations to its people. But the thought of someone trapped in the suffocating darkness, alone and terrified, made something in his chest constrict in a way he could not ignore. The mine swallowed him whole, the temperature dropping mercifully as he moved deeper into the tunnel. His lantern cast wild shadows on the roughly hewn walls, illuminating the thick dust that still hung in the air like fog. Yates pulled his bandana up over his nose and mouth, breathing shallowly as he navigated around fallen timbers and scattered ore. The further he went, the more extensive the damage became. What had been a passable tunnel was now a maze of obstacles. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. "Can anyone hear me?" For a long moment, there was nothing but the settling creaks of stressed wood and shifting stone. Then, faint and far away, he heard it, a voice, distinctly female, calling back. "Here! I am here! Please, I cannot move!" Yates pushed forward with renewed urgency, climbing over a pile of rubble that nearly reached the ceiling. His hands scraped against jagged rocks, leaving streaks of blood on the stones, but he barely noticed. The voice grew louder as he progressed, and he could hear the barely controlled panic in it now. "Keep talking," he shouted. "I am coming to you. Keep talking so I can find you." "I am pinned," the voice called back, steadier now that she knew help was near. "My leg! Something fell on my leg. I cannot see anything. My lantern broke." Yates rounded a bend, and his lantern light revealed the extent of the catastrophe. The tunnel had completely collapsed about 30 feet ahead, a solid wall of rock and timber blocking any further progress. The voice was coming from the other side. His stomach dropped. She was trapped beyond a cave, and that would take a crew of men with proper equipment days to clear. He moved closer, examining the debris with a practiced eye born from years of ranch work and the occasional mine job when cattle money ran thin. The collapse was recent enough that the rocks had not fully settled, but stable enough that it might hold if he was careful. "Can you hear me?" he called, pressing close to the pile. "Yes." The relief in her voice was palpable. "Yes, I can hear you clearly now. My name is Yates Sullivan. I am going to get you out of there, but I need you to tell me exactly where you are and what your situation is." There was a brief pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was more controlled, almost businesslike despite the circumstances. "My name is Olivia Granger. I am approximately 5 feet from the collapse, based on where I was standing when it happened. A support beam fell across my left leg just above the ankle. I have feeling in my foot. So I do not believe the bone is broken, but I cannot pull free. The air is getting stale." Yates appreciated her clarity. Many people would be hysterical by now, but Olivia Granger was giving him useful information. "Is there any light at all on your side?" "No, complete darkness." He set down his lantern and began to carefully remove rocks from the top of the pile, testing each one before pulling it free. The last thing he needed was to bring the whole thing down on both of them. As he worked, he kept talking, as much to reassure her as to keep himself focused. "Your father made it out safe. He was trying to come back for you, but the foreman held him back." "That sounds like father," Olivia said, and he could hear the faint smile in her voice. "Always following safety protocols, even when his daughter is trapped underground. Is he very upset?" "I expect he is beside himself," Yates admitted, grunting as he shifted a particularly large rock. "But he was right not to come back in. This whole section is unstable." "Then why did you come in?" Yates paused, a rock balanced in his bleeding hands. It was a fair question, one he had not fully answered for himself. "Seemed like the thing to do," he said finally, resuming his work. He heard her laugh, a brief sound that was part amusement and part something that might have been a sob. "You risked your life on a whim?" "I have been accused of worse," Yates said lightly, though his jaw was clenched with concentration as he created a small opening near the bottom of the debris pile. It was barely larger than a rabbit hole, but he could feel air moving through it now, which meant the space on the other side was not completely sealed off. "Can you see any light?" he asked. Yes, I can see light, just a little, but it is there." Encouraged, Yates worked faster, widening the gap inch by painstaking inch. The rocks were sharp and unforgiving, tearing at his hands and arms until his shirt was dark with blood and dust. Time lost all meaning in the darkness. It could have been minutes or hours, he could not tell. His world narrowed to the next rock, the next handful of debris, the next few inches of progress. "Yates?" Olivia's voice was quieter now, tired. "Are you still there?" "Still here," he assured her, though his arms were screaming with fatigue. "Stay with me, Olivia. Tell me about yourself. Tell me anything." "There is not much to tell," she said, but he could hear her rallying, pushing back against the exhaustion and fear. "I am 22 years old. I have been helping my father with his surveying work since I was 16. My mother died when I was young, and father never remarried, so it has been just the two of us. People think it is strange, a woman doing this kind of work, but father says I have a better head for numbers than most men he has employed." "I do not doubt it," Yates said, finally creating an opening large enough to reach through. "You have been remarkably calm through all of this. Many men would have fallen apart by now." "I am terrified," Olivia admitted, "but panic will not free my leg or clear that debris, so I might as well save my energy." Yates found himself smiling despite the situation. He liked her practical nature, the steadiness in her voice even when she confessed her fear. He wedged himself partway into the opening, reaching through with his torn and bleeding hands. "Can you see my hand?" he called. "No, you are still too far away. Wait, I see movement. Yes, I see your hand. Reach for me if you can." He felt her fingers brush against his, a fleeting contact that sent an unexpected jolt through him. Then her hand grasped his firmly, and for a moment they simply held on, a lifeline in the darkness. "I have got you," Yates said. "Now, about that beam on your leg. Can you reach it?" "Yes, but I cannot lift it alone." Yates withdrew his hand reluctantly and continued working, enlarging the hole until he could squeeze his upper body through. His lantern, pushed ahead of him, finally illuminated the space beyond the collapse. It was a small pocket, maybe 10 feet across, where the tunnel had partially survived the cave-in, and there, pinned beneath a massive timber, was Olivia Granger. The lantern light revealed a young woman with dark hair escaping from a practical braid, her face smudged with dirt and streaked where tears or sweat had run down her cheeks. Her eyes, even red-rimmed and exhausted, were a striking green that caught the light like creek water in summer. She wore a simple brown dress covered by a leather apron filled with surveying tools and sturdy boots that had seen hard use. Despite her predicament, she sat with her back straight, chin raised, watching him with an expression that managed to be both hopeful and wary. "Yates Sullivan, I presume," she said, and there was that hint of humor again, threading through the fear. "The same," he confirmed, pulling himself fully through the opening. His shoulders barely fit, scraping against the rocks on both sides. He crawled to her side and examined the beam. It was solid oak, at least 8 inches thick, and had her leg trapped against the ground. "This is going to hurt," he warned her. "I expected as much." He positioned himself to get the best leverage, bracing his torn hands under the timber. On three, 1, 2, 3. Yates heaved with everything he had, muscles straining, the wounds on his hands splitting wider as he lifted. The beam rose an inch, then 2. Olivia gasped in pain, but immediately began pulling her leg free, using her hands to help drag it out from under the crushing weight. As soon as she was clear, Yates let the beam drop with a thunderous crash that sent dust raining down on them both. They both froze, holding their breath as the tunnel groaned ominously around them. When nothing collapsed, Yates turned to Olivia and gently examined her leg in the lantern light. Her ankle was swollen and already turning purple, but when he carefully probed the bones, she gritted her teeth and shook her head. Not broken, she confirmed, just badly bruised and possibly sprained. Can you stand? With his help, she struggled to her feet, or rather to her foot, keeping all weight off the injured leg. She was taller than he expected, only a few inches shorter than his own 6 feet. When she swayed, Yates caught her around the waist, and for a moment they stood there in the uncertain lantern light, closer than strangers should be, looking at each other with something neither could quite name. "We need to move," Yates said, his voice rougher than intended. "That cave-in could go at any moment, and I would rather not dig us both out." Getting back through the opening was an exercise in determination and pain. Yates went first, then reached back to help pull Olivia through. Every movement made her gasp or bite back cries of pain, but she never once asked him to stop or slow down. When they were finally both on the other side of the debris pile, Yates lifted her into his arms without asking permission. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed against him, her head dropping to rest against his shoulder. "I can walk," she murmured, but her body told a different story. "No need," Yates said simply, and began the long journey back to the surface. The tunnel that had seemed merely challenging on the way in became a nightmare with Olivia in his arms. Yates had to set her down repeatedly to climb over obstacles, then carefully lift her again on the other side. His arms burned with fatigue, his hands left bloody prints on everything he touched, and his legs threatened to give out with every step. But he kept moving, driven by something more than just the desire to reach safety. Every time he glanced down and saw Olivia's pale face, her eyes closed in exhaustion, but her jaw set with determination, something in his chest tightened. They rounded the final bend, and there, impossibly far ahead, was a circle of blessed daylight. Voices echoed down the tunnel, calling out. Someone must have seen Yates's lantern light. "Here!" Yates shouted, his voice cracking. "We are coming out." The last 50 feet were met by a crowd of miners and townspeople who had gathered at the entrance. Hands reached for them, and suddenly Yates was relieved of his burden as men carefully took Olivia from his arms. A gray-haired man in dust-covered surveyor's clothes pushed through the crowd with a choked cry. "Olivia! My God, Olivia!" "I am all right, Father," Olivia said, reaching for Robert Granger's hand. "I am all right. This man, Yates Sullivan, he dug through the collapse with his bare hands. He saved my life." Yates barely registered the words. Now that the urgency had passed, his body was reminding him of every injury, every strain, every screaming muscle. He stumbled, and Dutch Carmichael caught him by the arm. "Easy there, son. Someone get the doctor. We have got 2 for him." "The others," Yates managed. "The 2 miners who were in there." Dutch's expression turned grim. "Found them near the entrance of that tunnel section. They did not make it. But you saved the girl, Sullivan. That counts for something." Yates nodded numbly, allowing himself to be led to a shaded area where someone pressed a canteen of water into his hands. He drank deeply, only then realizing how parched he was. As his vision cleared and his breathing steadied, he found himself looking around for Olivia. She was surrounded by people, her father hovering anxiously while someone else wrapped her ankle. But her eyes were searching too, and when they found him across the crowd, she smiled. It was a tired, painful smile, but it transformed her dirt-streaked face into something luminous. The doctor, a harried man named Thompson, descended on Yates with professional efficiency. He cleaned and bandaged the worst of the cuts on his hands, clucking his tongue at the damage. "You are lucky you did not hit a major blood vessel," Thompson said, wrapping white gauze around Yates's palms. "These will take weeks to heal properly. No hard labor until then." "I am a cattle driver," Yates said. "Hard labor is what I do." "Not for the next few weeks, you do not." Thompson tied off the bandage with more force than strictly necessary. "I mean it, Sullivan. If you push these too hard too soon, you could do permanent damage. You might not be able to grip a rope or hold reins properly ever again. That sobering thought kept Yates quiet while the doctor finished his work. When Thompson moved on to check on Olivia, Yates found himself approached by Robert Granger. The older man's eyes were red, and his hands shook slightly as he extended one to Yates. "Mr. Sullivan, I do not have words adequate to thank you for what you did today. My daughter is everything to me, and you risked your life to bring her back. If there is anything at all, that I can do to repay you, you need only name it." Yates shook the offered hand carefully, mindful of his bandages. "No repayment necessary, Mr. Granger. I am just glad I happened to be riding by when I was." "Nevertheless, I am in your debt," Robert insisted. "Are you staying in Trinity long? I was planning to move on tomorrow, get my herd to San Antonio before the buyers lose patience." Even as he said it, Yates felt a strange reluctance, as though leaving suddenly seemed like the wrong choice. "Surely you will stay a few days at least. Let your hands heal somewhat." Robert gestured to the bandages. "The hotel on Main Street is modest but clean. I insist you stay there as my guest for as long as you need." Before Yates could protest, Dutch Carmichael approached with several other men. "Sullivan, the mining company wants to offer you a reward for your heroism today. $500 and a standing job offer, should you ever want to settle down." $500 was more money than Yates typically saw in 6 months of cattle driving. It was enough to buy land, start his own ranch, maybe even build a house. He thought of his small herd waiting outside town, the dusty trail to San Antonio, the endless cycle of driving cattle from place to place, with nothing to show for it but scars and stories. Then his eyes drifted back to Olivia, who was watching this exchange with undisguised interest. "I appreciate the offer," Yates said slowly. "Let me think on it a day or two." Robert beamed. "Excellent. Then it is settled. You will stay in Trinity while you consider, and while your hands heal. I will hear no arguments." And truly, Yates found he had none to give. That evening, after being installed in the surprisingly comfortable hotel room and cleaned up as best he could manage with bandaged hands, Yates found himself wandering down to the hotel restaurant. His stomach was reminding him that he had not eaten since early morning, and the smell of cooking food was impossible to resist. The restaurant was busy with the dinner crowd, filled with miners and townspeople, and the general noise of a small town at the end of a long day. Yates found a small table in the corner and ordered steak and potatoes from a harried waitress. He was halfway through his meal when a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Is this seat taken?" Yates looked up to find Olivia Granger standing beside his table, leaning heavily on a wooden crutch that looked hastily made. Her hair had been brushed and re-braided, and she wore a clean dress of soft blue that brought out the green in her eyes. The transformation from the dirt-covered, trapped woman in the mine to this poised, pretty young woman was striking. "Please," Yates said, standing awkwardly and pulling out the chair for her. "How is your ankle?" "Painful, but nothing that will not heal," Olivia said, settling herself with a small grimace. "Dr. Thompson says I should stay off it for at least a week, which is going to make Father frantic. He cannot manage the surveying work alone, and we have contracts to fulfill." The waitress appeared, and Olivia ordered tea and soup. When they were alone again, she studied Yates with frank curiosity. "I realized I never properly thanked you," she said. "In all the chaos, with Father and the doctor and everyone crowding around, I did not get the chance to tell you how grateful I am. You saved my life, Yates Sullivan. That is not a small thing." "Anyone would have done the same," Yates said, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "But they did not," Olivia pointed out gently. "They stood outside and waited for the mine to be declared safe. You went in while it was still collapsing around you. Why?" It was the second time she had asked him that question, in one form or another. Yates cut a piece of steak, buying time to think about his answer. "I grew up as an orphan in Missouri," he said finally. "Never knew my parents, raised in an orphanage until I was big enough to work. The other kids there, we looked out for each other because no one else would. There was this boy, Thomas, who was smaller than the rest of us. Got sick one winter with pneumonia, and the headmaster said there was no point wasting medicine on him, that he would die anyway. But we snuck him medicine anyway, took turns sitting up with him at night, kept him warm. He lived, grew up and became a school teacher, last I heard." Olivia listened intently, her tea forgotten. "So, you help people because someone once helped you?" "I help people because I know what it is like to be helpless," Yates corrected. and because I can. It is as simple as that." "I do not think it is simple at all," Olivia said softly. "I think it takes a particular kind of courage to run toward danger instead of away from it. A particular kind of heart." Their eyes met across the small table, and Yates felt that strange tightening in his chest again. He barely knew this woman, had spent less than a day in her presence, most of it in a collapsed mine tunnel. But there was something about the direct way she looked at him, the intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength she had shown even when trapped and injured. It called to something in him he had not known was there. "Tell me about cattle driving," Olivia said, breaking the moment as her soup arrived. "It must be a difficult life." Yates relaxed into the safer topic, describing the long drives from Texas ranches to railheads in Kansas, the challenges of managing hundreds of cattle across rivers and through storms, the camaraderie of the trail crews, and the loneliness of the work. Olivia asked intelligent questions, drawing out stories he had not told anyone in years. In turn, she spoke of her work with her father, the satisfaction of creating accurate maps that would be used for decades, the joy of solving complex surveying problems in the field. "People think it is unnatural for a woman to do this work," Olivia said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "They think I should be home learning to sew and cook, preparing to be some man's wife." "Can you sew and cook?" Yates asked. "Adequately when needed, but I am much better with a theodolite and a measuring chain." "Then you should use the skills you have," Yates said simply. "Life is too short to waste being unhappy just to satisfy other people's expectations." Olivia's smile returned, warmer this time. "I think I like you, Yates Sullivan. The feeling is mutual, Olivia Granger." They talked until the restaurant began to empty, until the waitress started giving them pointed looks. Finally, Yates walked Olivia back to the boarding house where she and her father were staying. It was a clear night, the stars scattered across the sky like diamond dust, and Trinity's main street was quiet except for the distant sound of a piano from one of the saloons. "Will you really leave tomorrow?" Olivia asked as they reached the boarding house steps. Yates looked down at his bandaged hands, then back at her hopeful face. "Dr. Thompson says I should not be doing hard labor for a few weeks anyway. I suppose I could stay a bit longer, let these heal properly." "Good," Olivia said firmly. "Then perhaps you could call on me tomorrow afternoon? I will be stuck in bed with my ankle elevated, according to the doctor's orders, and I would welcome the company." "I would like that," Yates heard himself say. He watched her navigate the steps with her crutch, wincing in sympathy at the obvious pain each movement caused. At the door, she turned back. "Yates, thank you again, for everything." Then she was inside, leaving him alone under the stars, wondering what exactly had just happened to his well-ordered plans. The next afternoon found Yates standing outside the boarding house, cleaned up as best he could manage and feeling unaccountably nervous. He had faced down stampeding cattle, survived floods and droughts, stared down angry ranchers and hostile rustlers without breaking a sweat. But the thought of spending time with Olivia Granger, properly and intentionally, made his palms sweat beneath their bandages. Robert Granger answered his knock with a welcoming smile. "Mr. Sullivan, please come in. Olivia mentioned you might visit. She is upstairs in her room. I will show you up." The boarding house was respectably maintained, with faded wallpaper and worn but clean furniture. Robert led Yates to a door on the second floor and knocked gently. "Olivia, Mr. Sullivan is here to see you." "Come in," Olivia called, and Robert opened the door, ushering Yates inside before discreetly withdrawing. The room was small but comfortable, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a desk covered in surveying notes and maps. Olivia was propped up in bed with several pillows, her injured ankle resting on a cushion. She wore a simple white nightgown, with a shawl around her shoulders, her hair loose around her face instead of its usual braid. The intimate casualness of it made Yates acutely aware that this was her private space, and he was being granted unusual access. "I am sorry to receive you like this," Olivia said, gesturing at her nightgown with a slightly embarrassed smile. "But the doctor was quite insistent that I stay in bed with my ankle elevated, and Father threatened to tie me down if I tried to get up." "No apologies necessary," Yates said, taking the chair she indicated beside the bed. "How are you feeling today?" "Sore, restless, and bored," Olivia admitted. "I am not accustomed to being idle. Father tried to bring me surveying work to review, but honestly I am tired of looking at numbers and elevation marks. I would much rather hear about what you have been doing today." Yates had spent the morning making arrangements for his small herd, paying a local rancher to board them for a few weeks while he decided what to do next. He described this process, which led to questions from Olivia about cattle ranching, which led to stories about his various adventures on the trail. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, as though they had known each other for years instead of barely a day. Somewhere in the middle of a story about crossing the Red River during a flash flood, Yates realized that Olivia was looking at his bandaged hands with concern. "Do they hurt very much?" she asked quietly. Yates glanced down at the white wrappings, already showing spots of red where he had used his hands too much that morning. "Some," he admitted, "but it is worth it." "Worth permanent damage? The doctor told Father that you might never regain full use of your hands if you are not careful." "You are alive," Yates said simply. "That makes it worth any cost." Olivia's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to gently touch his bandaged hand. "You barely know me. Why would you risk so much for a stranger?" "You stopped being a stranger the moment I heard your voice in that tunnel," Yates said. The words came out more intense than he intended, charged with an emotion he was not quite ready to name. "And I am beginning to think that maybe I was meant to be riding past that mine at exactly that moment. Maybe some things are supposed to happen." "Do you believe in fate?" Olivia asked, her hand still resting on his. "I never did before," Yates admitted, "but I am reconsidering." They sat in silence for a moment, hands touching, something unspoken building between them. Then Robert's voice called up the stairs, asking if anyone wanted tea, and the moment broke. But something had shifted, some invisible line had been crossed. Over the next week, Yates visited Olivia every day. Sometimes they talked for hours, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence while Olivia read and Yates simply enjoyed her company. He met the various townspeople who came to check on her recovery, becoming known around Trinity as the hero who had saved the surveyor's daughter. The mining company's offer of employment remained open, and more than one person suggested he would be foolish not to take it. As Olivia's ankle healed enough for her to move around with her crutch, they began taking short walks together, never going far from the boarding house, but enjoying the summer evenings and each other's conversation. Yates found himself telling her things he had never told anyone, about his lonely childhood, his dreams of someday owning land, his fear that he would spend his whole life drifting from job to job with nothing to show for it. "You are young yet," Olivia pointed out during one of these evening walks. "You are, 25? 26, Yates corrected. "Old enough to have something more than a horse and a saddle to my name." "The mining company's reward is a good start," Olivia said practically. "And the job offer would give you steady income. You could save money, buy land, build something permanent. Is that what you think I should do? Stay in Trinity?" Olivia stopped walking, balancing on her crutch as she turned to face him. They were standing in the quiet street, the setting sun painting everything golden. "I think you should do what makes you happy, but I would not be sad if you chose to stay." "Because we are friends?" Yates asked, though he knew it was more than that, had felt it in every conversation, every shared glance. "Because we are more than friends," Olivia said steadily. "At least, I hope we are becoming more, unless I have completely misread these past several days." Yates stepped closer, his heart pounding. "You have not misread anything. Olivia, I have been fighting this because it seems impossible. We have known each other barely more than a week. How can I feel this way so quickly?" "How can you not?" Olivia countered. "You held my hand in the darkness when I thought I would die alone. You carried me to safety despite your injuries. You have spent every day since then by my side. If that is not the foundation for something real, I do not know what is." "I have nothing to offer you," Yates said, frustrated. "No land, no house, no prospects beyond whatever the mining company might pay me." "I do not care about those things," Olivia said fiercely. "I care about you, your courage, your kindness, your steady presence. That is what matters to me." Yates reached up with his still bandaged hands and gently cupped her face. "If I stay in Trinity, if I take that mining job and start building a life here, it would be for you. I need you to know that. It would all be for you." "Then stay," Olivia whispered. "Stay and let us see what we can build together." He kissed her then, soft and careful, mindful of her injury and their very public location. But the kiss held a promise, a commitment made without words. When they pulled apart, Olivia was smiling through tears. "Is that a yes?" she asked. "That is a yes," Yates confirmed. "I will stay in Trinity. I will take the mining job, and I will court you properly with your father's permission and the blessing of whatever God decided to put me on that road at the exact moment you needed me." "I think I love you, Yates Sullivan," Olivia said wonderingly. "Is it too soon to say that?" "It is probably insane to say that," Yates replied, but he was smiling. "But I think I love you too, Olivia Granger. God help us both." They walked back to the boarding house slowly, Olivia leaning on both her crutch and Yates's arm. Robert Granger was waiting on the porch, and one look at their faces told him everything he needed to know. "Mr. Sullivan," Robert said formally, though his eyes were twinkling, "I wonder if I might have a word with you." Yates helped Olivia to a chair on the porch before turning to face her father. "Sir, I want to ask your permission to formally court your daughter. I know we have not known each other long, and I do not have much to offer yet, but I am planning to accept the mining company's job offer and establish myself here in Trinity. I can promise that I will work hard, treat her with respect, and do everything in my power to make her happy." Robert studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then his stern facade cracked into a smile. "Mr. Sullivan, you saved my daughter's life. You have visited her every day during her recovery. You make her laugh, you challenge her mind, and I have never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you. If you want my blessing to court her, you have it. With one condition." "Name it," Yates said immediately. "Stop calling me Sir and Mr. Granger. If you're going to be spending time with my daughter with the intent of making her your wife eventually, you should call me Robert." The casual mention of marriage made Yates's stomach flip, but not unpleasantly. "Thank you, Robert. I will not let you down." "See that you do not," Robert said, but his tone was warm. "Now, I believe I should go inside and give you two some time alone, within reason, of course." After Robert disappeared inside, Yates sat in the chair beside Olivia, taking her hand carefully in his bandaged one. The evening was soft around them, crickets beginning their nightly chorus, the smell of someone's cooking drifting on the breeze. "So it is really happening," Olivia said softly. "You are staying. We are doing this." "We are doing this," Yates confirmed. "Though I have to admit, I have no idea how to properly court someone. The orphanage did not exactly teach social graces." "I think you are doing fine so far," Olivia assured him. "Just keep being yourself. That is who I fell for after all." They sat together until full dark, making plans and sharing dreams, their hands intertwined. It was the first of many such evenings, the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet, but both were willing to trust. The next morning, Yates went to the Trinity Mining Company offices and formally accepted their job offer. Dutch Carmichael seemed pleased and relieved to have him, explaining that the mine had reopened after reinforcing the damaged sections, but they were short-handed and nervous. Having the man who had risked his life in a rescue on their crew would be good for morale. "We will start you on surface work until those hands heal properly," Dutch said, eyeing the bandages. "Sorting ore, helping with the equipment, that sort of thing. Once the dock clears you for harder labor, we will train you for underground work. It pays better, and you have already proven you have got the stomach for it." Yates spent his first day learning the operation of the mine, meeting the crew, understanding the workflow. It was different from cattle driving, more structured and predictable, but there was satisfaction in the work. More importantly, it was steady employment, the foundation on which he could build a life. His evenings were spent with Olivia, who was recovering quickly now. Within 2 weeks of the accident, she was walking without the crutch, though she still favored her injured ankle. She began accompanying her father on local surveying jobs again, much to Robert's relief. More than once, Yates stopped by their work sites during his lunch break, enjoying the sight of Olivia bent over her instruments, completely focused on her calculations. "You are a distraction, you know," she told him one afternoon, looking up from her theodolite with a smile. "I keep making mistakes in my measurements because I am thinking about you instead." "Then maybe you should think about me while you are not working," Yates suggested, "and save the surveying for when I'm not around." "Where is the fun in that?" Olivia laughed. Their courtship progressed naturally, without rush but with steady certainty. Trinity was a small town, and everyone soon knew that Yates Sullivan and Olivia Granger were a couple. They attended church services together on Sundays, took walks through the surrounding countryside, went to the occasional dance or social event. Through it all, Yates felt himself settling into this new life, roots growing deeper with each passing day. By September, his hands had healed enough for Dr. Thompson to remove the bandages permanently. The scars would remain, pale lines across his palms and fingers, but he had full use of his hands. That evening, he showed them to Olivia, who traced the scars gently with her fingertips. "These are because of me," she said quietly. "You will carry these marks for the rest of your life." "Good," Yates said. "They will remind me of the day my life changed, the day I found you." "You are impossible," Olivia said, but she was smiling. "Impossibly romantic and impossibly stubborn. Is that a complaint?" "Not even a little bit." In October, as the brutal Texas summer finally gave way to slightly cooler weather, Dutch Carmichael began training Yates for underground mining work. It meant going back into the tunnels, facing the darkness and confined spaces that could trigger memories of the cave-in. The first time Yates descended into the mine as a worker rather than a rescuer, his chest tightened and his breathing became shallow. "It is all right to be nervous," Dutch said, noticing his discomfort. "Hell, half the crew was nervous after the collapse, and they have been doing this for years. But we have reinforced everything, added extra support timbers. This mine is as safe as we can make it." Yates pushed through his fear, focusing on learning the work, setting charges, operating drills, hauling ore. It was hard, dangerous labor, but it paid well. By November, he had saved enough money from his wages and the original reward to start seriously looking at land for sale around Trinity. "There is a nice plot about 3 miles out of town," he told Olivia one evening. They were sitting on the porch of the boarding house, bundled against the evening chill. 20 acres, good water, some trees. The owner is willing to sell for a fair price." "Are you asking my opinion?" Olivia asked carefully. "I am asking if you would like to see it with me this weekend, if you think it would be a good place to build a house. Our house, eventually." Olivia's breath caught. "Yates Sullivan, are you proposing to me?" "Not officially," Yates said, his heart racing. "But I am telling you that when I think about my future, you are in every single moment of it. I want to buy that land, build a house, make a life, and I want to do all of it with you. So, yes, I suppose I am asking if you would be willing to eventually marry a former cattle driver, turned miner, with nothing but some scars and 20 acres to his name." "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation. "Yes to looking at the land, yes to building a house, yes to marrying you whenever you officially ask. Yes to all of it." Yates pulled her close, kissing her thoroughly despite the chill and the fact that they were on a semi-public porch. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Olivia was laughing. "We should probably tell Father," she said, "though I suspect he already knows. He has been making pointed comments about grandchildren lately." "One step at a time," Yates said, though the thought of a future that included children, a family, made something warm bloom in his chest. "First the land, then the house, then a proper wedding. Then we can discuss grandchildren for Robert." They told Robert that evening, and if he was surprised, he hid it well. Instead, he shook Yates's hand firmly and pulled Olivia into a long hug. "I could not ask for a better man for my daughter," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mother would have loved him," he added to Olivia. "She always said you would need someone as stubborn as you are, and I think you have found him." The land purchase went through in early December. Yates stood on his property for the first time as its owner, looking at the rolling Texas landscape with a sense of wonder. He owned land. He had a home, even if that home was currently just empty acres waiting to be built upon. Olivia stood beside him, her hand in his, surveying the plot with her professional eye. "The house should go there," she said, pointing to a slight rise. "Good drainage, nice view, close enough to the road but not too close. We will need to dig a well, and you should plant some trees for windbreak." "We," Yates repeated, loving the sound of it. "I like that you are already thinking in terms of we." "I have been thinking in terms of we since that day in the mine," Olivia admitted. "From the moment you found me in the dark, I knew somehow that we belonged together. It sounds ridiculous, but I knew." "It does not sound ridiculous to me," Yates said. "I felt it too." Christmas came, and with it, the first real winter weather Trinity had seen in months. On Christmas Eve, Yates invited Olivia and Robert to dinner at the hotel restaurant. It was a simple meal, but he had arranged for a small private corner table decorated with candles and winter greenery. Halfway through dessert, Yates stood and cleared his throat. "Olivia Granger," he said formally, pulling a small box from his pocket. "When I rode past that mine last July, I was just drifting through, planning to move on like I always did. I had no roots, no home, no reason to stay anywhere. Then I heard your voice in the darkness, and everything changed. You gave me a reason to stay, a reason to build something lasting. You made me want to be a better man, to create a life worth living. I love you more than I thought possible to love anyone. And I would be honored if you would agree to be my wife." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small but clear diamond. It had taken most of his savings, but the look on Olivia's face made it worth every penny. "Yes," Olivia said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, of course, yes." Yates slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her to her feet and kissed her soundly, not caring that they were in a public restaurant. Around them, other diners had noticed what was happening and began to applaud. Robert was beaming, wiping his own eyes with a handkerchief. "When?" Robert asked when they finally sat down again, Olivia admiring her ring from every angle. "Spring," Yates said, looking to Olivia for confirmation. "That gives me time to get started on the house, at least get the frame and walls up. I do not want to bring my wife home to empty land." "Spring is perfect," Olivia agreed. "Late April maybe, after the worst of the mud season, but before the heat becomes unbearable." They set the date for April 28th, 1879, which gave them 4 months to prepare. It was a busy 4 months. Yates worked double shifts at the mine, whenever possible, saving every penny for building materials and furniture. On his days off and in the evenings, he worked on the house, often with help from other miners and townspeople who had adopted him as one of their own. The structure grew slowly but steadily, walls rising from the foundation, a roof taking shape overhead. Olivia was equally busy, helping her father with surveying contracts while also making plans for the wedding and the house. She spent hours sketching floor plans and discussing furniture arrangements with Yates, her practical mind already organizing their future home. The wedding itself would be simple, held in Trinity's small church with a reception afterward at the hotel. By late March, the house was habitable, if sparsely furnished. It had 3 rooms downstairs, including a main living space, a kitchen, and a small bedroom, with a loft upstairs that could be finished later. The well had been dug and was producing clean water, and Yates had even built a small barn for the horse he planned to buy. "It is not much," he told Olivia when he showed her the completed house for the first time. "But it is ours, and we can add to it as we go." "It is perfect," Olivia said, walking through each room slowly, running her hands over the walls Yates had built with his own scarred hands. "It is home." The wedding day dawned clear and warm, a perfect spring morning in Trinity. Olivia wore a simple dress of white lace that her father had commissioned from the town's seamstress, her dark hair crowned with wildflowers. Yates wore his best suit, purchased specially for the occasion, his hair trimmed and his scarred hands scrubbed clean. The ceremony was attended by what seemed like half of Trinity. In the 9 months since the mine collapse, Yates had become a respected member of the community, and people were genuinely happy to see him settling down with Olivia. The church was packed, and those who could not fit inside gathered outside to listen through the open windows. Reverend Matthews, who had served Trinity for 30 years, conducted the ceremony with warmth and humor. When he asked Yates to repeat his vows, Yates's voice was steady and sure. "I, Yates Sullivan, take you, Olivia Granger, to be my wife. I promise to love you, honor you, protect you, and build a life with you worthy of what you have given me. You saved me as surely as I saved you in that mine, and I will spend the rest of my days making sure you never regret taking a chance on a drifter with nothing but determination and love to offer." There were sniffles throughout the congregation. Olivia's vows were equally heartfelt. "I, Olivia Granger, take you, Yates Sullivan, to be my husband. I promise to love you, support you, challenge you, and stand beside you through whatever comes. You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. You showed me that love can happen in the most unexpected moments, in the darkest places. I am yours, today and always." When Reverend Matthews finally pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers. Yates kissed Olivia with all the love and promise he felt, and she kissed him back with equal fervor. They walked down the aisle together as Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, greeted by well-wishers and congratulations on all sides, The reception at the hotel was lively and joyous. There was food and music, dancing and laughter. Robert Granger gave a touching speech about his daughter and the man she had chosen, wiping his eyes more than once. Dutch Carmichael, serving as Yates's unofficial best man, told the story of the rescue to anyone who would listen, embellishing it slightly with each retelling. As the evening wore on and the party showed no signs of slowing, Yates leaned close to Olivia and whispered, "Should we make our escape?" "I thought you would never ask," she whispered back. They slipped out quietly, borrowing a horse and small wagon someone had decorated with flowers and ribbons. The 3-mile ride to their new house was magical in the twilight, the spring air soft and fragrant. When they arrived, Yates lifted Olivia and carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing at the tradition. Inside, someone had thoughtfully lit lamps and left flowers on the table. The bedroom that had been empty that morning now contained a proper bed, a wedding gift from the mining company. Yates set Olivia down gently, suddenly nervous. "I have never done this before," he admitted. "Been married, I mean. Had a home, a wife. What if I am terrible at it?" Olivia took his scarred hands in hers, bringing them to her lips. "Then we will learn together. That is what marriage is it not? Two people figuring out how to build a life side by side. We have already survived a mine collapse, courtship, and a wedding. I think we can handle whatever comes next." Yates pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "At least a dozen times," Olivia said, smiling. "But I will never tire of hearing it. I love you, Olivia Sullivan. I loved you from the first moment I heard your voice in the darkness. I will love you until the day I die." "Then we are even," Olivia said, "because I love you exactly the same way." They made love for the first time in their new bed, in their new house, as husband and wife. It was tender and awkward and perfect, exactly as it should be. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking softly about their plans and dreams until they drifted into sleep. Married life suited them both. Yates continued working at the mine, but now he came home each evening to a house with lamplight in the windows and the smell of cooking food. Olivia continued her surveying work with her father, though she spent more time managing the business side of things from home. Their evenings were spent together, talking over the day's events, making improvements to the house, simply enjoying each other's company. By late summer, Olivia began to suspect she was pregnant. Dr. Thompson confirmed it in September, much to everyone's delight. The baby was due in early April, almost exactly a year after the mine collapse that had brought Yates and Olivia together. "It is like everything has come full circle," Olivia said, her hand resting on her still flat belly. "This time last year, I was convinced I would die in that collapsed tunnel. Now I am married, living in my own house, expecting a baby. It feels like a miracle." "You are a miracle," Yates said, kneeling beside her chair and placing his hand over hers. "You and this baby, our life together, all of it. I thank God every day that I happened to be riding past that mine at exactly the right moment." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and winter. Olivia continued working until she became too uncomfortable, then spent her days organizing the house and preparing for the baby. Yates built a cradle in his spare time, carving it from oak with careful attention to every detail. Robert visited frequently, excited about the prospect of becoming a grandfather. On April 3, 1880, after a long night of labor, Olivia gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James Robert Sullivan, after no one in particular, but because they both liked the name. James had his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes, and from the moment Yates held his son for the first time, he was utterly lost to love. "Hello there, little one," Yates whispered, supporting the tiny head carefully. "I am your father. I promise I am going to do my best by you, teach you everything I know, make sure you grow up safe and loved." Olivia watched from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "He is perfect." "He is," Yates agreed, "just like his mother." Robert arrived within hours of the birth, bearing gifts and grandparently pride. He held James with the expertise of someone who had done this before, his eyes misty as he looked at his grandson. "Your mother would have been so happy to see this," he told Olivia. "A grandson to carry on the family name, her daughter happily married to a good man. She would have loved it all." The months after James's birth were challenging but joyful. Yates took extra shifts at the mine to ensure they had enough money for the growing family, while Olivia managed the household and cared for their son. They were exhausted more often than not, but neither would have traded it for anything. By the time James was 6 months old, Olivia began helping her father with surveying work again, bringing the baby along in a specially designed carrier. James seemed to enjoy the outdoor time, gurgling happily while his mother and grandfather worked. Yates would sometimes meet them at job sites during his lunch break, marveling at how natural Olivia looked with their son strapped to her back, while she sighted through a theodolite. "You are an amazing woman," he told her one afternoon, taking James so she could focus on her measurements. "Working, being a mother, managing everything, I do not know how you do it." "I have a good partner," Olivia said simply. "That makes all the difference." Time passed in the pleasant rhythm of family life. James learned to crawl, then walk, then run. He was a curious, energetic child who got into everything and asked endless questions. Yates taught him to ride a horse by age 3, much to Olivia's nervous protest. By age 4, James was following his father around the property, helping with chores, and generally being underfoot in the most endearing way. In the spring of 1883, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time the baby arrived in early winter, a girl they named Sarah Louise. She was smaller than James had been, with a cap of dark hair and her father's serious gray eyes. Where James was bold and adventurous, Sarah was thoughtful and observant, content to sit and watch the world around her. "We are building quite a family here," Robert observed one Sunday afternoon. He had become a fixture in their lives, joining them for dinner most evenings and spending his free time with his grandchildren. 4 generations of Grangers in Trinity County, and now the Sullivan line starting too. "It is more than I ever thought I would have," Yates admitted, watching James show Sarah a grasshopper he had caught, the 4-year-old being surprisingly gentle with his baby sister. "There were times, before I met Olivia, when I wondered if I would spend my whole life alone. Now, I cannot imagine being without any of this." By 1885, Yates had been promoted to shift supervisor at the mine, a testament to his hard work and reliability. The increased salary allowed them to expand the house, adding 2 more bedrooms upstairs and a proper dining room. Olivia had developed her surveying business into a thriving concern, working primarily from home, but occasionally taking on field work when her father needed help with the more challenging projects. James was now 5 years old and starting school in Trinity, riding into town with his grandfather each morning and staying with Robert until one of his parents could collect him. Sarah was a toddler, getting into everything with the determination of a much older child. The house was loud and messy and full of life, and Yates loved every chaotic moment of it. "Do you ever miss it?" Olivia asked one evening after the children were in bed. They were sitting on the porch, enjoying the cool evening air. The freedom of the cattle drives, moving from place to place. Yates considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it," he admitted. "Wake up, move the herd, make camp, sleep, repeat." There was no complexity to it, no big decisions beyond which route to take or where to water the cattle. But I do not miss the loneliness, the feeling that I was not building toward anything. This, he gestured to encompass the house, the land, his family. "This is what I was meant to build. I just did not know it until I heard you calling from the darkness of that mine." 7 years, Olivia said wonderingly. "It has been 7 years since that day, and it still feels like the most important moment of my life." "Mine too," Yates agreed. "Everything good I have came from that moment. You, the children, this life. All of it traces back to the day I decided to ride into that collapsing mine." In 1887, Robert Granger suffered a stroke that left him partially paralyzed. He moved into the Sullivan house permanently, occupying one of the new downstairs bedrooms. It was a difficult transition for everyone, but particularly for Robert, who had always been fiercely independent. Yates and Olivia cared for him with patience and love, while James and Sarah, now 7 and 4 respectively, entertained their grandfather with stories from school and endless questions about his surveying adventures. "I am sorry to be such a burden," Robert said one afternoon, frustration evident in his halting speech. "You are not a burden, Father," Olivia said firmly. "You are family, and family takes care of each other. You raised me alone after Mother died, gave me an education and a profession, supported me when I chose to marry a cattle driver turned miner. Now it is my turn to take care of you." Robert lived for another 2 years, long enough to see James excel in school and Sarah start her own education. He passed peacefully in his sleep in the March of 1889, with Olivia holding his hand. The funeral was well attended, a testament to his long years serving Trinity as its primary surveyor. He was buried beside Olivia's mother in the town cemetery. "He had a good life," Yates told Olivia as they stood beside the grave after everyone else had left. "James and Sarah were with friends, giving their parents time to grieve. He saw you happily married, met his grandchildren, lived long enough to see the work he built continue. That is more than many people get." "I know," Olivia said, leaning into her husband's embrace. "But I will miss him terribly." "So will I," Yates admitted. "He gave me his blessing when I had nothing to offer but determination. He became the father I never had growing up. We will honor his memory by continuing his legacy, raising our children to be as principled and dedicated as he was." After Robert's death, Olivia took over his surveying business completely, running it with the same precision and professionalism that had made her father successful. She trained an assistant, a young man named Peter Henley, who showed aptitude for the work, allowing her to balance the business with her family responsibilities. The Sullivan household settled into a new normal, busy but content. James grew into a responsible young man with his father's work ethic and his mother's intelligence. He showed interest in both mining and surveying, often spending his summers working with Yates at the mine and helping his mother with survey work. Sarah was quieter but equally capable, showing a particular talent for mathematics that made both her parents proud. By 1892, Yates was assistant mine supervisor and part owner of a small cattle operation on the side, having used his savings to buy into a partnership with several other local men. The additional income allowed them to live comfortably, to save for their children's futures, to help others in Trinity who fell on hard times. They had become pillars of the community, the kind of people others looked to for leadership and support. "Did you ever think, back when you were drifting from job to job, that you would end up here?" Olivia asked on their 13th wedding anniversary. They had left the children with friends and escaped to Trinity's hotel for dinner, reliving their first meal together all those years ago. "Never," Yates said honestly. "I thought I would probably die young in some stupid accident, or grow old alone with nothing but memories of cattle drives to show for my life. I certainly never imagined I would have a wife I love more every year, 2 amazing children, a house, land, a position of respect in the community. None of it seemed possible for someone like me." "Someone like you?" Olivia repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You mean someone brave enough to run into a collapsing mine to save a stranger? Someone dedicated enough to dig through solid rock with bare hands because it was the right thing to do? That kind of person?" "I mean someone with no family, no connections, no advantages," Yates clarified. "Orphans do not usually end up with lives like this." "Maybe that is exactly why you ended up with this life," Olivia suggested. "Because you knew how rare and precious it was. Because you did not take any of it for granted. Because you were willing to fight for it with everything you had." Yates reached across the table and took her hand, the scars on his palms visible even in the soft lamplight. "These scars are the best thing that ever happened to me," he said, "because they brought me to you, and you brought me to this life. I would dig through that mine 1,000 times over, if it meant spending my days with you." "Fortunately, you only had to do it once," Olivia said, smiling. "And I thank God for that every single day." The years continued to pass, marked by the milestones of family life. James graduated from school and chose to work at the mine with his father, learning the business from the ground up, with the eventual goal of taking over when Yates retired. Sarah showed interest in surveying and began training with her mother, displaying the same aptitude that had made Olivia successful. The family business, both mining and surveying, looked set to continue for another generation. In 1896, the Trinity Mining Company offered to make Yates a full partner, recognizing his 18 years of dedicated service and leadership. It was a significant promotion, one that came with both increased responsibility and a substantial stake in the company's profits. Yates accepted, though he made it clear he would remain hands-on, working alongside his crew rather than managing from an office. "You have come a long way from the drifter who rode into town that July day," Dutch Carmichael told him at the celebration of his partnership. Dutch was retired now, living comfortably on his savings, but he still took an interest in the mine. From hero to miner to supervisor to partner, hell of a journey. "It started with a choice," Yates said, looking across the room to where Olivia was talking with Sarah. James was there too, tall and strong at 18, already looking like the man he would become. I could have kept writing that day, could have told myself it was not my problem, that someone else would handle it. But I stopped. I went in, I found her. Everything else followed from that single decision. Best decision you ever made, Dutch said. No question, Yates agreed. By the turn of the century, the Sullivan family was firmly established as one of Trinity's most respected. Yates's partnership in the mine had made them financially secure, while Olivia's surveying business continued to thrive. James had become shift supervisor in his own right, learning the mining business from the inside out. Sarah, now 18, was beginning to take on her own surveying contracts with her mother's guidance. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1899, Yates and Olivia took a trip to San Antonio, leaving James and Sarah to manage things at home. It was their first real vacation, a chance to see something beyond Trinity and the surrounding countryside. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in restaurants, visited the Alamo and the Riverwalk. It was a different world from their daily life, sophisticated and urban, but Yates found himself eager to get home. 20 years, Olivia said, as they sat by the San Antonio River on their last evening in the city. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like yesterday that you were pulling me from that collapsed tunnel. I was so scared, Yates admitted. It was something he had never told her, keeping his own fears locked away in the knowledge that she had needed his strength. When I realized the tunnel was completely blocked, when I understood how much rock I would have to move, I was terrified I would not reach you in time, that you would suffocate, or that I would cause another collapse trying to dig through. Every rock I moved, I was certain it would be the one that brought everything down on both of us. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, her hand tightening on his. I was terrified too, she said. But when I heard your voice, when you told me you were coming for me, I believed you. Even trapped in complete darkness with no reason to think anyone could reach me, I believed you would find a way. And you did. We saved each other that day, Yates said. I may have dug you out physically, but you saved me in every other way. You gave me a reason to stop drifting, to build something lasting. You made me a husband, a father, a better man than I ever thought I could be. I think you were always that man, Olivia said softly. You just needed the right circumstances to show it, the right person to show it to. They went home the next day, back to Trinity and the life they had built there. James and Sarah had managed fine in their absence, but it was clear everyone was happy to have the family together again. The house felt more complete with all of them there, the way Yates imagined it always would. In 1901, James met a young woman named Catherine Porter at a church social. She was the daughter of a local shopkeeper, pretty and kind, with a practical nature that reminded Yates of Olivia. James courted her with serious intent, and by Christmas he was asking Yates for advice on proposing. Do you love her? Yates asked. Not just think she is nice or pretty, but really love her? I do, James said without hesitation. I love talking to her, working alongside her, planning a future with her. When I think about spending my life with anyone else, it feels wrong. She is the one, Father. I am sure of it. Yates smiled, remembering saying similar words to Robert Granger over 20 years ago. Then you ask her, and you promise to treat her with respect and love every day of your life. That is all any woman really wants, to know that her husband will be her partner and her friend as well as her lover. James proposed on New Year's Day 1902, and Catherine accepted. They married that June in the same church where Yates and Olivia had been married, with much of the same congregation in attendance. It was a joyous occasion, made slightly bittersweet by the awareness that James would soon be establishing his own household, his own family, moving beyond the orbit of his parents' home. He will be fine, Olivia told Yates as they watched James and Catherine dance at their reception. We raised him well. He knows how to work hard, how to treat people with respect, how to build a life, and Catherine is a good match for him. She will keep him grounded. When did we become the older generation? Yates wondered. I still feel like that young cattle driver who stumbled into heroism by accident. You are only 46, Olivia reminded him with a laugh. Hardly ancient. Though I suppose having a married son does make us officially middle-aged. Middle-aged and happy, Yates said, pulling her onto the dance floor. I will take it. Sarah followed her brother into marriage 2 years later, wedding a surveyor named Thomas Kent, who had worked with Olivia on several contracts. Thomas was a good man, serious about his work, but with a dry sense of humor that made Sarah laugh. Yates liked him immediately, appreciating the way he treated Sarah as an equal partner, both in work and in life. "Father, do you think Mother and I are strange?" Sarah asked the night before her wedding. She and Yates were sitting on the porch of the family house, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "So many women just want to be wives and mothers, but we love our work. We want both the family and the profession. Thomas says it is one of the things he loves about me. But I worry sometimes that I am not being a proper wife." "Your mother was never a proper wife," Yates said, earning a surprised laugh from his daughter. "What I mean is, she never fit into the expected mold of what a wife should be. She worked alongside her father in a profession dominated by men. She had opinions and expressed them. She insisted on being a partner in our marriage rather than just a helpmate. And I loved her for all of that. I still do. If Thomas loves you for the same reasons, then you have found the right man. Never apologize for being who you are, Sarah. The right person will love you because of it, not despite it. Is that what you and Mother have, a true partnership?" "In every way that matters," Yates confirmed. "We have worked side by side for 25 years, building this life together. Some years I earned more, some years she did. Some decisions were mine, some were hers. Most were ours together. That is what a good marriage is, I think. Two people who choose each other every day, who support each other's dreams, who build something together that is stronger than what either could create alone." Sarah hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Father, for being a good example of what a husband should be, for showing me that I do not have to choose between being myself and being loved." "You could never be anyone but yourself, sweetheart," Yates said, his voice rough with emotion. "And anyone who does not love exactly who you are does not deserve you." The wedding the next day was beautiful, and watching Sarah marry Thomas, Yates felt the same bittersweetness he had experienced at James's wedding. His children were grown, making their own lives, and while he was proud beyond measure, there was grief too in letting them go. "Our nest is officially empty," Olivia said that night as they lay in bed, the house feeling larger and quieter than it had in years. Both children had their own homes now, their own lives beginning. "What do we do with ourselves now?" "The same things we have always done," Yates said, pulling her close. "Work, love each other, help our community, and spoil our grandchildren terribly when they come along." "Grandchildren," Olivia repeated, smiling. "That is going to take some getting used to." But within a year, they had their first grandchild, a boy James and Catherine named Robert, after his great-grandfather. More followed over the years. Sarah and Thomas had twin girls, Emma and Grace. James and Catherine had two more children, a daughter named Olivia and another son they called Samuel. The Sullivan house, once quiet, became loud again with the shouts and laughter of grandchildren. Yates officially retired from active mining work in 1910 at age 56, maintaining his partnership but stepping away from the daily operations. He spent his time managing his cattle interests, helping with the grandchildren, and working on various community projects in Trinity. Olivia semi-retired as well, handing most of the surveying work to Sarah and Thomas, while she focused on the business management side. They were sitting on their porch one warm evening in June 1912, watching sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold. It had been 34 years since the day they met, and they had been married for 33 of them. Their children were grown and successful, their grandchildren healthy and happy, their life together a testament to what could be built from a single act of courage. "Do you ever think about that day?" Olivia asked, though she already knew the answer. They talked about it sometimes, usually on significant anniversaries or when recounting family history for the grandchildren. "Every time I look at my hands," Yates said, holding up his weathered, scarred palms. "Every time I see you, or our children, or this house, or anything we have built together, that day changed everything." "It was supposed to be a quick surveying job," Olivia mused. "In and out in a few hours, mapping one new tunnel. Father insisted I go with him because I was better at the calculations. If I had not been there, if the collapse had happened an hour earlier or later, if you had ridden past 5 minutes sooner or later and missed it entirely. But you were there, and the collapse happened when it did, and I was riding past at exactly the right moment," Yates finished. "I have stopped trying to understand why things happen the way they do. I just know I am grateful for every twist of fate that led me to you." "The drifter and the surveyor's daughter," Olivia said with a smile. "We were an unlikely pairing." "The best things usually are," Yates replied. They sat in comfortable silence as the last light faded from the sky and stars began to appear. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and closer by, a whippoorwill sang its evening song, the sounds of the Texas countryside, familiar and beloved after 3.5 decades. "I love you, Olivia Sullivan," Yates said, as he had said thousands of times over their years together. "More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "I love you too, Yates Sullivan," Olivia replied, taking his scarred hand in hers. "My hero, my husband, my partner. Thank you for digging me out of that darkness. Thank you for building this life with me." "Thank you for giving me a life worth building," Yates said, "and for loving a former cattle driver with nothing but determination and a willingness to risk everything for the right cause." "It was not a risk," Olivia said softly. "Loving you was the easiest thing I have ever done." They went inside together as the evening grew cool, hand in hand, as they had been for 33 years. The house was quiet, but not empty, filled with the accumulated memories and love of their decades together. In the morning, there would be work to do, grandchildren to visit, life to live. But for now, there was just the two of them, still choosing each other, still building their life together, one day at a time. The years that followed were good ones. Yates and Olivia grew older gracefully, their children and grandchildren surrounding them with love and attention. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1919 with a huge party attended by what seemed like all of Trinity. James had taken over full management of the mine, proving himself an able and fair leader. Sarah and Thomas had expanded the surveying business throughout the region, building on the reputation Olivia and her father had established. In 1923, the Trinity Mining Company officially named Yates as one of the founders of the modern operation, recognizing his 45 years of service and dedication. A plaque was erected at the mine entrance commemorating both the 1878 collapse and the rescue that had become legendary in Trinity's history. "Local hero Yates Sullivan risks life to save. Trapped surveyor," the plaque read. "His courage and determination in the face of danger exemplify the spirit of Trinity. July 15, 1878. Yates stood before the plaque on the day of its unveiling, Olivia beside him. Their children and grandchildren gathered around. He was 70 years old now, his dark hair gone mostly gray, his face lined with 7 decades of life. But his eyes were still clear, his grip still strong when he held Olivia's hand. "I was not a hero," he told the assembled crowd. "I was just a man who happened to be in the right place at the right time, and who made the choice to help instead of riding on. The real story is not the rescue, it is what came after. The family we built, the life we created, the community we became part of. That is the legacy that matters." But to Trinity and to his family, he would always be the cowboy who dug with bare hands through solid rock to save the woman he loved, even though he had not known yet that he loved her. He would always be the hero of their founding story, the beginning of everything that came after. Yates and Olivia lived to see their 50th anniversary in 1929, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. It was a golden summer day, and they held the celebration on the land Yates had purchased all those years ago, now developed and beautiful, with mature trees and cultivated gardens. 5 decades of love and labor had transformed empty acres into a family homestead. 50 years, Olivia marveled, looking at their assembled family. 50 years since I stood in that church and promised to love you forever. It seemed like such a long time then, a whole lifetime stretching ahead of us. Now it feels like it passed in moments. "The best moments of my life," Yates said. "Every single one of them with you." They danced that day slowly and carefully in consideration of their age, but with the same love and joy they had shared at their wedding reception 50 years earlier. Their grandchildren watched with wonder, seeing in their elderly grandparents the young couple who had fallen in love in the darkness of a collapsed mine, who had built a life from nothing but determination and faith in each other. Yates Sullivan passed away peacefully in his sleep on a warm October night in 1932 at the age of 78. He died in the house he had built, in the bed he had shared with Olivia for over 50 years, with his wife's hand in his and his scarred palms finally at rest. His funeral was attended by hundreds, a testament to the life he had lived and the impact he had made on Trinity and everyone who knew him. Olivia lived for 3 more years, spending her final days surrounded by family and filled with memories of her great love. She passed away in April 1935 at the age of 79, on a date that was almost exactly 57 years after the mine collapse that had brought her and Yates together. Her family liked to think she had waited for that anniversary, had chosen that day to rejoin her husband. They were buried side by side in Trinity's cemetery, their headstones simple but eloquent. Yates Sullivan, 1854-1932, beloved husband, father, grandfather, friend. He saw darkness and brought light. And beside him, Olivia Granger Sullivan, 1856-1935, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, friend. She was lost and then was found. Their children and grandchildren continued the family legacy, working the mine and the surveying business, raising their own families in the tradition of hard work, dedication, and love that Yates and Olivia had established. The story of the rescue became family legend, told and retold to each new generation, a reminder of where they came from and the courage it sometimes takes to build something lasting. The mine eventually closed in the 1950s, played out after nearly 80 years of operation, but the Sullivan name remained prominent in Trinity, carried on by descendants who had been taught that heroism is not about grand gestures, but about the daily choice to love, to work, to build, to help. That sometimes the most important decision you can make is to stop when you could keep riding, to dig when you could walk away, to risk everything for someone you do not even know yet, but who will become your whole world. The house Yates built with his scarred hands stood for over a century, eventually becoming a historical landmark in Trinity. Visitors could tour the rooms where the Sullivan family had lived and loved, could see the original foundation and timbers that Yates had set in place with such care and determination, could read the plaques telling the story of a cattle driver who became a hero, and the surveyor's daughter he saved who became his wife. But the real legacy was not in buildings or plaques or family trees. It was in the lesson their story taught, simple and profound, that love can begin in the darkest places, that courage is measured not in grand gestures but in persistent determination, and that a life well lived is built one choice at a time, one day at a time, with someone you choose to stand beside through everything. Yates Sullivan had ridden into Trinity on a hot July day in 1878, with nothing but a horse and a willingness to help. He had heard a voice in the darkness and made the choice to answer it, to dig through impossible obstacles with hands that bled and arms that screamed with exhaustion. He had found Olivia Granger in that collapsed mine, had carried her to safety, and in doing so had found his own salvation. Their love story spanned 50 years and touched countless lives. It created a family that would continue for generations, established a legacy of service and dedication in Trinity, proved that the most unlikely circumstances can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. It showed that heroes are not born but made in the moment when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things for no reason other than it is right. And it all started with a scream in the darkness, a cowboy willing to risk everything, and bare hands digging through solid rock toward a voice that called for help. Everything that came after, every moment of love and joy and family and life, flowed from that single choice to stop riding and start digging, to see darkness and bring light, to be lost and then found together.